Okay, good morning and welcome to Iyun Benzion. We're learning Yevamos Samach Gimel 63. This Gemara today talks about an interesting concept, a very relevant concept to most people. I believe there's three types of wives. There's an Isha Tova and Isha Ra, which the Gemara details. Isha Tova is a woman who's a good wife, as I explained in the regular Daf Yom Mishra. She's the woman that does the Ritzon Baila. She listens to her husband. Her husband makes a decision. She goes along with it. She doesn't fight her husband. Isha Ra, the Gemara says. The Gemara gives examples of an Isha Ra. Abai says she sets the table for him, and she lashes out with her tongue. She criticizes him. Rava says she sets the table. She does the chores in the house. She sets the table for him. She cooks some meals, but she doesn't sit with him. She doesn't accompany him. And I believe part of that is that she opposes every decision he makes. That would be Isha Ra. And I believe there are women in the middle who sometimes do this, sometimes do that. Anyway, the Gemara says, what do you do if you have an Isha Ra? It's not a good thing. The Gemara says, Isha Ra is comparable to the pasuk, Motza ani mimar mimaves Isha. A bad woman is worse than death itself. Death is pretty bad. What's worse than death? To live with a bad wife. What do you do with a bad wife? So the Gemara says, on Tam Gimel Beis, the Gemara says, Amarava, about the fourth wide line. Isha Ra mitzvah lagarsha. If you have a bad wife, you ended up marrying a bad wife. You obviously didn't know that when you got married to her. You have to divorce her. Mitzvah. It's a mitzvah to divorce her. D'chsiv, similarly. D'chsiv garish leitz v'yatza madam yishbos din v'kalo. And the pasuk in Mishlei says that you should get rid of. Garish means to drive out. Leitz, a scoffer, who's causing fights in your house and embarrassment. So it similarly means supposed to megarish your wife. Now, the problem is that the Gemara before this details a lot of Amoraim and Tanoim that had bad wives. Seems like they didn't divorce them; they were living with them. One of them didn't cook the right food for her husband. The Gemara says in Samachol and Aleph. One had a bad wife, and he would still bring chocolates and fine jewelry to his wife because he said, as long as they do two good things, they raise your children, and they're Metzilas Min Achet, they stop you from having thoughts about another woman. So, and then there was a story of Yehuda and told of Yitzchak. He said, "Who's your Hura, your mother?" But then he said, right, and he brings a Chazal. The Gemara says that Ein Adam Motzi Karas Ruach Ishtar Rishona. So, is it a good idea to divorce your wife? You only find, he says, even though you had a bad wife, he says you only find contentment from your first wife. So, your first wife, you married. Maybe it's not a good idea to divorce her. You're not going to find contentment from a second wife. You're supposed to get married. You learned yesterday, you're a person, according to most opinions, you always have to be married. Lo tovi osla adam lavado. Supposed to always be married. So what do you do? It's not like you're supposed to divorce your wife. The Gemara mentioned Ben Sira also compares with tzaras. So a bad wife is like tzaras. What do? You get rid of her, and you wrap him tzaras. So I want to answer all these questions and say there are different rishonim. The Meiri says it doesn't mean you should actually divorce her. The only time you should actually divorce her, the Meiri says. If you're constantly fighting, if you're able to make peace, some people are good at making peace with their wives. So they live it. It's called vatrona. Some people like to say mavater, just give in to whatever she wants. The husband's able to live with that. Okay. Others say that it's only talking about there's no children. If you're married with children, you should stay married for your children. How many times have we heard that? You stay married for your children because it would ruin the lives of your children if you get divorced, right? Ruin your own lives, so for your children. I don't like that advice. I think it's stupid advice. I mean, you and your wife's life come before your children. So you're having a terrible life. You know, if you need to get divorced, you get divorced. I mean, children are an afterthought. Anyway, I'd like to say over here, Lagarsha, right, says that Moshe was Megarish's wife. It doesn't mean that he divorced her. It means he separated from her. And I also don't think it means totally separate. The Gemara says on the time of Gimel Aleph, the Gemara says, Eselo Ezer Kenegdon, Parshas Bereshis, right? Seemingly two contradictory words. Ezer is a helpmate, someone's going to help you. Kenegdo means someone who's going to oppose you, right? That's what we said in Isha Ra. She's opposing you, she's getting in the way. So the Gemara resolves that. I think Rashi al Torah brings it. How do you resolve this contradiction? So the Gemara's first answer is, it says, Zacha Ozro. So if he's Zacha means normally thinking means he merits it, meaning he has merit. He has a lot of mitzvos So therefore, he'll get a wife that's going to help him. Lo zachal kenegdo. If he doesn't merit it, right? He has a lot of averos, so he's going to get a wife who's going to oppose him. An isha ra, he's going to get a bad wife. I would like to say that's not the pshat. And zacha actually means, if you go to the bank here in Israel, and you want to see when you get money in the bank and when money comes out of the bank, it's called zechus v'chova, right? Zechus is a credit and chova is a debit. And credit is, credit cards is that basically they're giving you something for free. That's what credit is. They're giving you something for free. When you get a wife, Hashem doesn't depend on what your state is now. Are you doing mitzvahs, doing averos? It means if you get a good wife, right? Any good thing that Hashem gives you, everyone knows that certain people have it better than others. Some people are blessed with certain things, and some people have miserable lives. Some people are blessed, everything goes their way in life, and some people are very successful. And some people are blessed with horrible lives, or blessed, I don't know, cursed. Is it fair? Is it fair? It is fair, of course it's fair. Baruch Hu makes everything fair. But if you get a lot of stuff, it's a credit, meaning it's like a credit card. You have to pay it back. Hashem's extending a favor to you. You have to pay it back to you. When you get that good wife, when you get an extremely successful business, you get any great family, any great things, great kids, those are credits to you. You have to pay it back. You owe money to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, as opposed to a chova, when you get a woman who's opposed to you. So that's a chova, it's a debit, meaning it takes away some of your punishment ultimately after death. That's what I like to suggest over here. So when the Gemara says Isha Ra Megarsha, the mitzvah of Garsha, I don't think it means, right? It sees from the Chazal that Hashem gives you for a reason. He gives someone Kenegdo as a chova, meaning it's a good thing, not a good thing for your life right now, but it's a good that it'll take away from ultimately retribution you're going to have to pay after you die. So that's a good thing in a certain sense. So I don't think Magarsha means you should get rid of her and get rid of that debit. Hashem gave you the debit for a reason. Magarsha means to separate from that woman, or even I wouldn't say separate, I would say more like the idea of divorce should be in your conversation. You have to negotiate with a wife like that. You can't, if you're married to a woman who's going to oppose every decision you make, so if you give in to everything, you might have peace in your house, but you'll also have a miserable life because you're living the life that she wants you to live, not the life that you want to live. So divorce has to always be on the table as a negotiating point that you're willing to give up the marriage if she doesn't acquiesce to some of your requests, right? You have to be fair. You have to compromise. If she's opposed to everything, so half of the things you should get, half of the things maybe you shouldn't get, but you should have the ability to negotiate. And one of the best advice in negotiating is to have a threat or to have something on the table, divorce on the table, in order to be able to get certain things, to have pushback that your wife shouldn't get everything she wants from you, right? A woman can make decisions about herself. That's up to her, but she shouldn't be able to control her husband and tell her what to do. If you have pushback, you have to have pushback. The divorce has to be on the table, and that's Gemara brings a pasuk from Mishlei, which is talking about a scoffer. It doesn't mean you're not married to a scoffer. A late is a man. It's lashon zachar. It doesn't mean you should drive away. You should divorce him. You can't divorce a man. You're not married to a man, but you could drive him away, or you could use it on the table as a bargaining chip in order to get a fair marriage over there. And like the Gemara says, that you really only find contentment in your first wife. So because it's a debit and because you only find contentment with your first wife, you should stay married to her. But it should be on the table. There should be separation on the table. There should be divorce even on the table as a bargaining chip in order to make the marriage fair. Hope you enjoyed today's shir. It's pretty good marriage therapy also. So you got 2 for 1. See you tomorrow. Bye.